Welcome everyone to the October General Meeting of the Riley County Democrat Party. I think you all know me by now, but I'm Kelm Lear, I'm the chair. We have Kath, there she is in the middle, vice chair, Tanya, our treasurer over there, and then Penny, our secretary, is recording for us. We're going to start with the treasurer's report. We have a current balance of approximately $19,200. We had a huge, what was that?
We have 20,141.
Oh, good. What Tanya said. Well, then that puts us over our goal. I was hoping we'd have about $20,000 by the spring because we have two elections that we have to worry about next year with the constitutional amendment, which we'll hear about momentarily in August, and then the general election in November. So that is awesome. Thank you, Tanya, for correcting my numbers. So now we'll move into the updates and announcements from the Get Out the Vote Committee. They have mailed approximately 200 postcards to inactive young Democrats. These are 18 to 29-year-olds who haven't exercised their right to vote yet. We're encouraging them to vote in the local election. We have also sent 2 text messages, one encouraging people to register or update the registration. I'm sure all of you have received those. Thank you for not opting out if you haven't. And then we have a couple more coming in, one to remind people about early voting, which starts tomorrow, and then another one to remind people to vote if they haven't on Election Day, November 4th. From the fundraiser committee, we held our fundraiser on Saturday, September 20th, and I know many of you were there, and we raised $4,800. So, yeah, we collected over 9,000 in donations and minus costs, $4,800. And the candidates, they personally told me they had an amazing time. They were very glad they came to Riley County instead of Colby, Kansas, where the KDP was hosting an event, so I'm glad we could outdo them. And Mayor Ewing also personally told me that he was very inspired by the crowd we had there for him. So thank you all who donated and who came to that event. And then the last announcement I have is that as of 3 days ago, we have an official First Lady of the Riley County Democratic Party, because Michaela and I got married on Saturday. Thank you all for celebrating our 3-day wedding anniversary. Anyway, with that, we'll move into our guest speaker. I'm going to introduce Joe real quick, and then he'll come up. Joe advocates for the Kansas Bar Association and the legal community at the federal, state, and local levels, cultivating relationships with the judicial branch and meeting with stakeholders to develop proposals that increase access to justice and judicial independence. During the legislative session, he writes the weekly Advocate blog and live tweets legislative hearings. Joe received his Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, Philosophy, and Economics from Eastern Oregon University and his JD from Washburn University School of Law in 2002. And a fun fact about him, I remember this from Pot County, is that he was born and raised in Maui, Hawaii, and moved to Kansas sight unseen. Please welcome Joe Molina. So he's going to present for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then we will open the floor for questions. So there you go.
I appreciate it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good luck. You know, every time they do the intro and they get to the end and they say I'm from Hawaii, and then everybody gives me the same look.
I was about to ask the question, what was it like moving from Hawaii to Kansas? Because I'm trying to get to Hawaii. It's for vacation, but...
Just as pretty. I have no complaints. How I got here was a series of horrible mistakes, but I've loved it since I've been here. I actually moved to Kansas sight unseen in 1999 to go to law school. I went ahead and picked Washburn because they're the ones that sent me a letter. And at the time, I was not married, and this is how good my advocating skills were, because I convinced my girlfriend at the time to travel with me from Oregon, where we went to school, to Kansas without a wedding ring, without a promise of a wedding ring, and most likely without probably finishing law school. But things have worked out really, really well. Kansas has treated me very, very well. I'm very proud to be living in Kansas. I raised 2 boys in Kansas. My wife has taught at the same school for 25 years in Kansas. We're proud Topekans, and we're happy to be here. And extended family refused to come. One other interesting fact is my mom and my dad have only been to Kansas once. They came to watch our boys when we were on our 10-year anniversary. We got back at 3 o'clock in the morning. We chatted a little bit from our vacation. We got ready for bed, and then my dad goes, well, we're off. So while we're here today, my main job, right, is the Director of Legislative Services. It's a very fancy way of convincing people to do things that they normally wouldn't want to do. I'm a lobbyist. I spent a lot of time in the Kansas Capitol between January, the first or second week in January, all the way through May, sometimes June. And there's an opportunity for us to go back sometime in early November because we may have a special session. I know there's a friend up front. I've chatted with her a number of times under much better circumstances. And in my role as the legislative, in my role as a lobbyist, right, I am focused on making sure that people who need to get to court, that the court is always open for anyone who needs it. Anyone who needs to avail themselves of legal services, I want to make sure that they have that opportunity, money notwithstanding. Everyone has a constitutional right to go to court. And when you go to court, I think it's always important to remember that is normally not your best day. Nobody wants to go to court. Nobody wants to talk to a lawyer. Nobody ever wants to see a judge, right? Never has, I shouldn't say never, there's only 3 instances where that can actually be a good thing. One is when a judge is getting you married. One is where a judge is having you adopted. And one is where a judge is having you naturalized. Everything else is going to be a winner and a loser, and you probably don't want to be the loser. I want to make sure that you have that opportunity to go even though you don't want to go. So that's one part. The other part is I want to make sure that the judges that preside over our cases are as unbiased as we can get. I want them unbiased, I want them smart, I want them neutral, and I want them to know the law. That shouldn't be that hard, right? That shouldn't be that hard. That should be the world's lowest bar, where someone looking at a case can be unbiased towards both parties, right? And so I need to talk about the thing that's in front of us that we're facing next August is Constitutional Amendment SCR 1611, which would change how we select the Kansas Supreme Court justices from the current model of the merit selection process to a direct election. What we found by talking to people in groups like this throughout is there is not a lot of fully understanding of what the merit selection process is. Has anyone here actually heard of the merit selection process? I need my job to make sure everybody's hand raised up when I get around the state. This is my 15th stop. Does everyone understand how we got the merit selection process? Everyone here heard of the triple play, right? The triple play is probably the most controversial issue that's happened to Kansas on the judicial front in 70 years. In 1956, we had a governor called Hall who lost. He lost the docking. He lost in November, and between November and January, when he was supposed to leave office, he's a lame duck governor. Nothing to do. And in that time period, he talked to the Chief Justice of the Kansas Supreme Court, who was a very dear friend, and they concocted a plan, basically, on how the Supreme Court Justice would retire. Governor Hall, who had already lost, he wasn't going to keep his seat, he would step down from being governor, elevating his lieutenant governor, John McGush, to the governor's seat. And when he elevated to the governor's seat as Governor McGush, his only act would be to appoint Fred Hall to be the next Chief Justice of the Kansas Supreme Court, right? So it's basically musical chairs as bad as you can get. The only official act other than taking office and leaving office over 11 days for Governor McGush, who was the 34th governor of the state of Kansas, was to appoint his predecessor to the Supreme Court. That is a horrible way to get a judge. And Kansas were rightfully upset by that. So much so that a constitutional amendment was put on the ballot and instilled the process we have now, the process we have had for 70 years, which is the merit selection process. The merit selection process is boiled down to this. You have a commission. The commission is called the Supreme Court Nominating Commission. While we're very efficient, we're not very creative, right? So that's the name, Supreme Court Nominating Commission. On that commission are 9 individuals. We have lawyers from each congressional district, and we have appointed individuals, appointed by the governor, also from each congressional district. So you have experts, and then you have appointed people who have some political buy-in. And most of those people, I should say most, a lot of them are actually community leaders, business folks, right? People who understand the process, people who actually avail themselves of the judicial process. So they know a little bit about that too, right? Those leaders and those experts, as in those lawyers, get together, and whenever there is an opening on the Supreme Court, like we had this past summer, basically they hold a job interview. And the process goes like this. You have an opening on the Kansas Supreme Court. The court puts out a notice and says, anyone who is qualified, right, please apply. To be qualified, you gotta be over 30. You gotta actually practice law for at least 10 years. And you must be licensed in the state of Kansas and reside in the state of Kansas. Those are the only 4 things that you gotta be. That is the bar, right? And the bar basically is on the floor. Anybody who fits those characteristics could actually apply to be on the Kansas Supreme Court. I would fit those characteristics to be on the Kansas Supreme Court. I could apply. I should not apply, right? I am not qualified. I am not as smart as those people, and it's best left to better minds, right? But any lawyer residing in Kansas over 30 who has practiced for 10 years can actually apply to be on the Kansas Supreme Court. People do apply. This last time we had 18 individuals, and what that means is you have to have, obviously, cover letter, application, writing samples, references, and then you must submit those to the Kansas Supreme Court Nominating Commission, right? One of the biggest misconceptions is that the Supreme Court Nominating Commission just talks to the lawyers who are applying and in an afternoon decide, well, we'll pick these 3. That is not how it happens at all. When you apply, you go through a vigorous background check months before we actually do the interview, the public interview, right? You're assigned a lawyer expert and you're assigned a business leader or community leader, and they go through each application, 2 of them, right? They review all of your writing samples. Make sure, 1, you wrote it, right? Make sure, 2, you have an understanding of the law and how it's applied. Number 3, make sure you have an understanding of precedent, how previous law will actually affect future law. How you act in a courtroom, right? Are you congenial, right? Do you get along with people? Are you confrontational? Do you have a good respect among your peers in the community upon which you live? That is something I think is very important for lawyers to play a part in when you are selecting Supreme Court justices, is these lawyers are coming from our ranks. We know them, right? I know more lawyers in the state of Kansas than probably anybody else, right? And I've been to almost every community that has lawyers. I can tell you how they are, right? I can tell you how much they advocate for their client. I can tell you, well, that guy kind of every once in a while likes to step on the line. And that is something that only lawyers would know because that's who we deal with. So 2 people will interview each person, each candidate, right? Every candidate that was applied this last time were asked to sit for an in-person interview. And that in-person interview is held at the Kansas Supreme Court Center there in Topeka. During COVID, I believe we did a couple of Court of Appeals through Zoom. They sit in front of the 9, they're asked questions for half an hour. It is an open meeting. Anybody, all of you could actually attend these. I have been to every single opening on the Kansas Supreme Court since I took this job. I have listened to every applicant take questions, and they're not easy questions, right? They're not questions that I would probably be able to answer successfully, but a lot of people do. We have a lot of very qualified individuals. They go through, this time it was 2 days of interviews of all 15 applicants. Then they have an open voting process, right? Each person, all 9 of them, have a voting slip, and they will write down. Joe Molina, if I was on the Supreme Court Nominating Commission, I'd write down, Joe Molina likes X. I like B, I like Y. And then you go down and then you tally them, and then you eliminate them by the people who get the least amount of votes. This last time, I believe we had 7 rounds of voting. And all of this is actually online. You can go and watch it. It's on YouTube. I can send somebody, if they want, a link to it. You can watch it. I'm in the background, tapping my toe, because it's a long, long day, right? And once we come up with 3 individuals who get the most votes among the Supreme Court Nominating Commission, they are then voted on as a panel, and they're sent to the governor, right? The governor then has 60 days to select who she wants to replace or who she wants to fill the open spot on the Kansas Supreme Court. The governor's office then can do their own background, which they do. They call their references, they call relatives, they call clients, they call opposing counsel, they call defendants in some cases where you had a very contentious type of case, right? You want to see how everybody interact and all facets of how this person, who's going to be on the highest court in Kansas, acts when they're dealing with the public, when they're dealing with the judiciary, and they're dealing with their peers as lawyers, right? That is the merit selection process in a nutshell, right? It is not an easy process. It is an arduous process. Everyone who undertakes the thought of applying to be a Supreme Court justice, do not take it lightly. It is a significant endeavor. And that is how we were able to weed out some of the folks that aren't as meritorious as the others. It's not to say that they're not qualified, because to be qualified, you only need those 4 things. But are you the most meritorious, right? Are you the most unbiased of the group that we can find? Doesn't mean that they're biased, right? But they're not the most unbiased. And that is the selection process we feel at the KBA, and many other people feel, is the best for Kansas. You're going to hear a bunch of things that lawyers dominate the process. I would ask you to go and watch the interviews. I would ask you to reach out to some people on the Supreme Court Nominating Commission and ask them, the business leaders and the community leaders that sit on the Supreme Court nominating. I would ask you to talk to them. Linda Wells, who used to live here in Manhattan, was here for, yes.
Oh, Linda.
Wells.
Weiss. Well, there's 2, I think
There's
you're
2
thinking
Lindas.
of somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
I apologize.
I know them both,
Yes.
so
Linda was-
talk to them both.
I-
She actually sat on it. I believe she was a real estate person for a long time. She was appointed by Governor Brownback when he was actually governor of the state of Kansas. She's a huge supporter of that. And I believe she's as Republican as they get.
Yes.
And she's very involved in Republican politics, but she sat on the Supreme Court Nominating Commission, and you can tell her, you can ask her. She testified against these types of bills in the past for the KBA about how well it is run, about how there is no backroom deals. There's no back room, right? It's an open meeting. You can see everything that's going on, right? There is no one putting a thumb on the scale. You're going to hear a bunch of other things from the people that support the amendment that says that lawyers dominate the process. We do not. We do not. And it's hard to prove a negative, right? So I would beg you, or I would challenge you to go look at the tape. We actually have tape. Now, on to SCR 1611. We are politically a little early in the game, right? People attention is not on next August, right? People's attention are on Halloween and Thanksgiving. And so right now, I believe the best goal we can have is to make sure that everybody understands the current process and how good it actually runs, how efficient it actually runs, and how it actually works for the people of Kansas. You have voices on the Supreme Court Nominating Commission from all facets of Kansas, right? They're all from each, they have 2 from each congressional district. So everybody in Kansas gets a little bit of a piece of the pie, right? When you talk about the constitutional amendment, that may not be the case. I'm going to use this as an example. 8 years ago, when Governor Laura Kelly was candidate Kelly for the governorship of Kansas, she didn't win a majority of the counties. We have 105 counties. She didn't win, I believe she won less than 10% of the counties. And she became governor of the state of Kansas. She won 9. She won 9 of 105 counties, right? We all know which counties those are. Those are the big counties. And if you have an election for Supreme Court justice, the opportunity for rural communities to have a say are very, very small. Very small, right? Because that's not where the folks are voting from. That's not where the money's going to come from. When we looked at what happened in Wisconsin this past election cycle, you're looking at $75 million pumped into one race for one justice. Here we'll be looking at replacing all 7 over 6 years. I don't think we have enough money to run that. Right? That's millions and hundreds of millions of dollars that could be going to other things. I don't know, like lowering the wait list for services, right? Shoring up our rainy day fund, maybe a little bit of property tax relief, God forbid. There are other things that we can do, right? Instead of spending $75 million on each race. Another thing that, that concerns me is when you look at the money, the majority of that money, the overwhelming majority of that money, came from outside of Wisconsin. So basically you have money from outside of Wisconsin looking to pick Wisconsin judges. I cannot think of anything more un-Kansas in my life. Imagine someone from, I don't know.
Elon Musk.
Yeah. Or worse yet, someone from Missouri. Dumping in $20 million, right? And helping us pick who we think is the best justice for the Kansas Supreme Court. And I'm not saying that could happen. That will happen. There are people out there with enough money to burn. Elon Musk, right? He had a raffle. He gave away $1 million to someone in, 2 people in Wisconsin race. That is amazing, and that is influential. Not only does that help drive the vote, that gets all eyes on that issue. The thing about it, though, is he could probably spend less in Kansas because we're a cheaper market. Way cheaper market. Right? We only got Kansas City to worry about. You up to Wisconsin, you got Green Bay, you got Chicago, you got all kinds of places where you can spend your money. Just from a person who watches a little bit of TV, I am not looking forward to all the ads, right? You'll be inundated every ad. What was it? 4 years ago, we did the value them both, right? Every other ad was about value them both, right? And in between those ads was an ad for someone running for office, right? That's all there was, right? I didn't even know what Whataburger was serving, right? It was just ad. And so that's something else we're gonna have to deal with is the monetization of our judiciary, right? Someone's going to try and buy it. Because if you go to elections, the first thing you understand is that it's going to be for sale. And the best way I can explain this to people is I buy my kid, he's spoiled, they're both spoiled, whatever they want. Because I found out at an early age, their love was for sale, and I wanted it. And I bought them that bike because they love daddy. Right? And that's just me. Imagine if you can buy an entire judiciary, right? That would be, man, that's amazing. And you don't have to buy all 7, mind you. You only have to buy 4, right? Because the 4 will be a majority, and then they get to set the rules. If you have an elected judiciary, another thing that we need to be concerned about is what their priorities are. Will their priorities be to the law and the Constitution, or will their priorities be to their constituency? The people who give them money, because you're turning judges into politicians immediately, right? Because it is not cheap. Is it cheap to run for office? No, it is not cheap. You have to ask for money all the time, right? You have to ask for money after you just won a race because you want to run again. And this will happen every 6 years if this passes. And then you're going to have to figure out, right, is the Constitution my priority? Right? Is this law the priority? Is the marginalized group my priority? Or is it the people that help me get re-elected in 6 years? That is always a concern. We have to worry about special interests. But that is for a monetary and campaign starting next spring. We're in the process of polling. We're in the process, again, of fundraising. I shouldn't say the Kansas Bar Association, I represent the Kansas Bar Association on a group called the Kansans for a United Unbiased Court. KUIC, we pronounce it quick. I don't know how we did that. And we are constantly meeting. I believe we have a meeting every 3 weeks now. And we're doing polling. We're seeing what messaging works, what people respond to, and how they're feeling right now. And right now, no one's really focused in on this race. Obviously, though, we get a lot more information about this next spring. So the best thing we can do is educate people about the current process. I would like to leave you with this. I think I probably went a little long. I'd like to leave you with this. These are open meetings when you're talking about the merit selection process. You can go to the court website. You can go to the Kansas Bar Association website. We have a site specifically called Your Kansas Judges. It was designed initially to provide retention election results, right? The final part of the Supreme Court nominating commission and the merit selection process is, once that person is elevated to be on the Supreme Court, right? After 1 year, they must stand for a retention election, where everybody in the state of Kansas gets to vote and say, you get to stay or you gotta go. And if you gotta go, you go, and we start the process over. So we have a part where the public does play a significant role. They're the final judge on that. They get to say whether you stay or not. And we've been very fortunate. We've had some very good judges in the state of Kansas where retention elections show that. You can go to our website again, yourkansasjudges.org. At their website, you'll find the retention election results. You'll find all the information in that little paper I gave you. You'll also find bios for every judge that is currently on the court for the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. You'll also find some of their writing samples, right? You can see what they wrote about specific cases and how they decided those and some of their rationales. You'll see when they're up for retention election again. We run a survey. We ask every lawyer in the state of Kansas to provide us information about how they feel a judge actually did, and then we publish those results. And it matches pretty well once the retention election results come in, and those can be compared side by side. It's a pretty, I didn't build it, somebody else built it, I just gave them the stuff to put on it. But it's a pretty slick little website, so I'd appreciate it if you guys could take some time and take a look at that. But other than that, if you guys have any other groups you guys would like me to come and chat to, maybe help better understand merit selection, I have car, will travel. I've been, again, to 15. They can be social organizations, the League of Women Voters, your Rotary, your small town Chamber of Commerce. 6 guys in a room. I will talk to whoever needs to be, who wants to listen, and I appreciate you guys not being bored. My name is Joe Molina. I have cards back there if you guys need me. Thank you for having me.
Joe, will you stand for questions?
Of course.
So my first question is this. I saw a guy, when we were passing out those vote no cards, this guy walked past and he said, don't you think it would be a better idea to vote for our judges? And I said, no. But then you get to pick who you want. I said, well, then you get to pick unqualified people. He said, well, would that be so bad? I mean, I'm serious. This guy was, and he was serious. I mean, I think he was sober. This is what you're dealing with as far as there are some people who really think it's better. Because he was like, well, Kansas is the last state that does it this way.
We're not.
No, I didn't think so either. But like I told him, no, I don't want to see judges voted for, because the Wisconsin judgeship was a prime example of why we shouldn't do it that way. Because I think Elon put in, what, $70 million?
No, yeah, it was, I know it was
something close to
at
that.
least 2 commas. It was a lot of money. It was more money than I have. More money than all of us probably put together have that he.
And I guess he has that kind of money to burn, but still we're a small state.
We are.
And we're a mostly red state. So I'm not sure I want to see it go in that direction, because it's hard enough dealing with the folks in the Capitol. Those guys you lobby. And I mean, how do those conversations go?
They're short. They're very short.
So they're convinced that this is the way to go. Is that what you're telling us?
Leadership is convinced that this is the way to go. I heard from a number of legislators that they didn't want to vote for the direct election. They would be much more comfortable with another model called the federal governor appoint, Senate confirm model, which is very similar to what we have on the federal level. That's just because you have a background in that. You've seen that work, and they'd be more comfortable with that. You probably have a better opportunity under the federal model, the federal governor appoint model, to get rural individuals, right? Because under that one, the governor can pick whoever they want. We do that currently for the Kansas Court of Appeals. Under Republican leadership, under Democratic leadership, Governor Kelly put together the Court of Appeals nominating commission, where they go through all the steps that the Supreme Court nominating commission does, but for the Court of Appeals. And then she selects one of the three that are presented to her, instead of just picking whoever she wants.
But the federal Supreme Court model isn't working.
Oh, I would agree.
I mean, those guys got up there under oath and lied to senators of stuff they said they would not do.
As a lawyer, I'm gonna say allegedly.
No, they lied.
Yeah.
I just want to make a point that I happen to know about. A friend of my husband's, they went to school together at Notre Dame, and he was a Supreme Court justice, excuse me, in Kentucky. Couple of things, they had to run for election, and they could not take any money. I don't know if any other state does it that way or not, but because he couldn't take any money, he had to finance his own campaigns, and one of the last ones that he ran, he spent $55,000 of his own money, and that was probably 20 years ago. So I just think it's important, and he actually lost an election because of a horse racing issue, and he was in Kentucky, and he was a very conservative, very straight arrow, and I don't know what it was, but something wasn't perfect about it, and he didn't side with them, and then, of course, he lost his election. But he was on the Supreme Court for a very long time, and, you know, I think we have to have the ability to do the right thing.
You do, I believe so.
Yeah.
You shouldn't lose your job for following the Constitution, right? That should be one of those things that everybody just agrees upon. Well, when you mentioned that in Kentucky, they can't take any money, right? Under the
20 years ago.
under the amendment that's going to be put forward to citizens next August, we don't know, right? There is a one clause when you read the constitutional amendment that says the rules for these elections will be set by the legislature.
Oh my God.
Right, so they actually will be able to set up whether you take money or not, how you take money or
That
not.
would be my amendment.
Whether or not these are party-driven, whether you have a candidate running as a Republican and a candidate running for Democrat, whether you have a primary. Right? We don't know any of these things. It is extremely vague. The only thing that they put forth to the people is, hey, you want to elect your justices? If you say, yeah, don't worry, we'll figure out all the other details later. Right? That's not a great idea. That's not a great way to actually run one of these things. I suspect that this next session, they'll try and put forth some things. I'm not sure they'll pass them, but I guarantee you they'll put them forth so they can talk about those when they're on their campaign trails. Like, look, we could do it this way. I introduced this bill, right? But that bill's not law yet, and then they could always change it the next session. I'm also hearing we're in for a very short session. They want to get out of there. Yeah, they want to get out of there April 1, which is a little problematic because we don't get our consensus revenue estimates until the third week in April.
April 15th is when they decide, and then we go back and get the results.
Yeah, but they want to be done and home by April 1. So if we mess up the budget, you're going to have to come back for a special session
Well, you know,
to fix
we
stuff.
finished April 14th this year without the consensus estimate.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you given this presentation to the Raleigh County Republicans?
No. God bless you. I will talk to him. You want me to go? I'll talk to him.
I have the phone number of the chair. Would you like me to call her? No, I have a question. Though.
Yeah, you call her. I'll go.
Okay.
What's the worst thing that can happen? They tell me no? Oh, well.
I'll ask them and they'll tell me no.
Yeah.
So, opponents of SCR 1611, some of them say that the court is already ideologically driven, partisan driven. What would you say to that?
If you look at the overall rulings from the court, right? Most of them are 7-0, right? Most of them. What is upsetting people are 4 cases, right? 4 cases that span 25 years. Every K-12, the Gannon for school finance, you bring that up, sometimes people lose their mind. The other one is the car death penalty case. That has always been there in the background, just churning up turmoil. You have some of the gender stuff that is percolating to the surface. And for me, the last one they did was something about torts claim. Torts. About removing the cap on non-economic damages. Back in the day, if you get run over by a truck, you're capped on what your non-economic damages, pain and sufferings could be. They changed that for certain cases, right? And so you have a lot of business interests that don't, insurance interests that are very concerned about that, so that's something that always runs. And finally, the biggest one that's always going to be talked about is the abortion. And the odd thing is, the court that actually went ahead and made the ruling on that abortion case, 3 of them are gone, right? It's a different, very different court now. But they normally get along very well. We just had a meeting with the chief 2 weeks ago. She's actually going to be on medical leave for a little bit. She's taking some time off to deal with some health issues. She's been ordered to bed rest. She has a hard time staying still. We wish her well. I'm sure she'll be back at it as soon as possible. That's probably the biggest thing, right? Is those 4 cases. If we could somehow get past those 4 cases, I don't think we have a constitutional amendment. I don't think anybody would have the appetite for it. I don't think there'd be any traction for it, but it's for those things. I should caution that when we talk to some individuals and we try and tie this amendment to the abortion amendment, it doesn't tie very well because people see that as 2 very different things. I'm here to tell you that they could be very much linked because 2 years ago we had something called Roe versus Wade. We don't have that now. And that's just because of how the Supreme Court of the United States changed. When we talk about precedent and how past rulings have some impact on future rulings, not so in that case. And so if you change the justices, they can change their mind on certain precedents, and that could probably be one of them, and I'm pretty sure that would be one of them. Just look who's giving the money. Yes?
I just want to make sure that I understood. When you, no, I lost it, sorry.
No worries, I'll come back to you.
Happens to us all.
So what are your,
Oh, I know what it was.
oh, sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
Sorry. I want to make sure I understood about, you said that I understood you to say that in the studies that you have been doing where you're checking what people are thinking about.
Yeah.
Right now, voters are not putting these 2 things together, is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay, they don't see these 2 things as related.
Nope.
Okay.
Some of the people that we polled don't even recall how they voted in the value them vote thing.
Okay.
That is long ago history. 4 years in politics, whew, that's a long time. That's like 28 years in lobbyist life.
So where are you guys leaning as far as your messaging for this?
We're still working on that. I'm going around telling everyone the easiest thing to remember is no change, no vote. That seems pretty straightforward. If you vote no on a constitutional amendment, that's not to change anything. A yes is always to change something. There are some states, right, like Iowa, they rarely change their constitution, rarely. I mean, like twice in 75 years. We changed our constitution because we didn't like taxing speedboats, right? And then that stuff, and then we do that so often. We changed it twice last cycle. We actually had 4 constitutional amendments on the value them both. We had 2 on the primary and 2 on the general. The value them both lost on the primary and the rules and regs lost on the general. But then we passed 2 other ones. Can anyone here tell me what those were?
Our right to hunt and fish is one of them.
Right, correct. And the other was how we select certain sheriffs in certain counties.
Yeah, the Riley County,
Yeah.
Get Riley County.
Yeah, right, those are the other two, nobody remembers those, right? But we're not immune from changing the Kansas Constitution. And that's why we have a process on doing that. But in this case, I'd rather you not.
So why do they want to change it?
Get their own people.
Well, no, but I'm saying, the reason I ask it that way, when you think about messaging, part of the messaging should be, well, here's why they want to change it. Because when people know the reason why they want something done, then, you know, when they start thinking about it, because like I said, that guy who told me, well, don't you think it's a good idea to vote for your justices? Well, no. And so, if you tell me why they want to change it, and then you start bringing up issues like how justices are bought, they become the property of the people who spend the most money on them.
That's harsher than I would put it. I would put it as there's a stronger appearance of impropriety and there's a question, right? There is a question upon which master do they serve, the person that gave them money or the Kansas Constitution. When you talk about a justice and a judge, any judge, municipal judge, right? They don't have a constituency, right? Representative, you have a constituency. You have a district where people live within your district, and you are supposed to do what they want that will be the betterment of them, right? When you talk about a justice, they don't have that. They have the Constitution, right? That is their constituency. That is the people, that is the thing that they must rely upon in their judgment. Not what's best for their district representation, but what upholds the Constitution based upon the facts, right? And you should not walk into any courtroom, right, and have a question on whether the judge who's making all the big decisions, right, is unbiased. You should automatically think he's unbiased and he's just going to hear the evidence, and where the chips fall, the chips fall. That's what you should be thinking. And I would hate for anyone to go into a situation that significant with that type of thought. It's a horrible way to go through a trial. But,
I mean, you're gonna probably have to.
That's a good point to make.
Yes,
That
exactly.
is a very good point, because all
Good,
the
I'll make
other
it more
things
often.
you said are, you know, kind of rules and precedents, but if you're in that seat.
Yeah.
And you think somebody has bought your judge, that would be really.
right. Nothing good comes from that. And so I want the most unbiased judges, right, that there can be.
Well, thanks for explaining all this.
Yeah, whatever.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
Don't we elect our district judges? And
we do.
so what do you say to people say, well, we do that and it works?
Right, because those specific districts, first of all, they're not statewide, right?
Right.
They're not statewide. Their rulings can be appealed not once, but twice to the Court of Appeals and the Kansas Supreme Court. The lawyers in that specific district know all the people running for judge, right? So they can evaluate that much easier than someone in Waukene trying to evaluate someone who's running for Supreme Court Justice out of Johnson County. The scale is so much more when you talk about a statewide election. You're talking about almost 2 million candidates voting for 7 people, right? Where in a district, you could probably get 8, 10,000 neighbors, friends, right?
Yes.
And so
how many people don't even know who they're voting for?
right. I've been to a number of these where people didn't even know that we had 7 Supreme Court justices. There are only 9. We can do that. Yeah, we can do 9. Now,
That's a good point.
the last point I think I need to make is, as a lawyer, any lawyers here?
I got family of them.
Right. Right. You probably relate to this. Not a lot of people like lawyers. Right?
That's why she's back there.
And so I think that's where some of the easiest ways to misrepresent what this Constitution Amendment does is to pick on the lawyers. As a lawyer and as your lobbyist, I should say, I honestly do love lawyers. I love lawyers and I love judges. We have a very difficult job. Judges have a horrible job. It's isolating, it's intellectually taxing, it's emotionally draining. Imagine being the person on the bench deciding, do I send this kid back to the mom, right, and hope she doesn't hit him again? Or do I not give her a second chance and put the kid into foster? And you gotta make that call, right? Every day, every day, every day. No way. I don't ever wanna be a judge, because that is a responsibility left to better people than me. So when we talk about lawyers, I also want to make sure that people understand that lawyers are your neighbors, they're your friends, they're your colleagues, they're the guy that runs the scouts, coaches the t-ball team. We just went to school for a little bit longer and we have more student loans, right? That's the main difference. But other than that, I appreciate the time. If you guys want me to talk to any other groups, please, if you want to chat after this, happy to meet. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you. Didn't mean to steal your spotlight.
No.
I'm just shouting out.
I'm not the one that got married, man. Thank you again.
Thank you. Announcements here. I want to remind everyone that early voting starts tomorrow and goes until Monday, November 3rd. You can go vote early in person at the county courthouse downtown, or you can vote from the comfort of your home by requesting a mail-in ballot. You can do that at ksvotes.org until Tuesday, October 28th, I believe. And then remember, we got rid of the 3-day grace period in Kansas, so make sure you get that mail-in ballot back in the mail early as possible. We also have some special events coming up in November. Colin McRoberts, he is a candidate for the 1st Congressional District against Tracy Mann. He's going to be here on Saturday, November 8th for a coffee social at Flight Crew Coffee. The time is TBD. I'm working with him right now on that. And then we also have Ethan Corson, who's running for governor. He's going to be here on Monday, November 10th at the Manhattan Public Library Auditorium. And I think that one is 7 to 8 p.m. But we'll put that out on our social media and in our newsletter. So if you can mark your calendars for that. So
He's
with
a
that,
good lawyer too.
there you go. Well, with that, thank you all so much for coming. And oh, yes, Lori?
I just want to say I have signs for this wonderful candidate, Amber Starling, for his position, and anyone that would like to put them up, I would just really appreciate it. We want everyone to know she's running and is a great candidate.
Do you have a list that people need to sign?
I have a list of the people I want people to sign up. Is that what you're saying?
Okay, yeah, because don't you have to get the signs back?
Right.
Yeah, okay, so make sure you sign them.
And that's Amber Starling.
Well, anyway, yes?
So I don't want to steal Amber's thunder here, but I'm Larry Fox.
Oh,
I'm also running. You
Oh,
might see
you're
my
Larry
signs
Fox.
around town. Check the box for Fox. So
I've seen the signs around town, I just didn't know who you were.
that's right.
Okay.
Here I am. So we hope the election goes well and
Well, thank you.
get out and vote.
All right, well unless anyone else has any special announcements, that is it for tonight. Thank you so much for coming and have a good evening.